All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of Daily December 2020. It's almost over. Yes, this is day 29. And I'm super proud that I'm still on track. Today, I mentioned in my video yesterday, I'm going to be doing something kind of cool. Um, and the reason this one is so late in the day is, oh, dear God, I have just learned a brand new branch of science in order to do this. I made a video earlier where I responded to taking 20, giving up on Pathfinder second edition in its current form. Um, and one of the things I learned during that video and answering some of the questions that were posted in the comments of that video is just how little I knew about Pathfinder second edition. Again, I own the core rule book. It's a really cool book. And I had glanced through it, and I'm actually relatively familiar with for first edition Pathfinder because I know did D&D 3 and 3.5 fairly well. Um, Mostly from playing a crap ton of video games that were set in the 3 and the 3.5. Neverwinter Nights would be the biggest one for me. And Pathfinder first edition is effectively D&D 3.7. It's almost identical to D&D 3.5 with a few kind of quality of life changes built in when it first launched, and then they went nuts over the convening years, and there's just so much more content for Pathfinder than there is for 3.5 because eventually 3.5 ended and they went to fourth edition. That's when Pathfinder became a thing. But Pathfinder didn't really start like winding down until a couple years ago when they started talking about second edition and actually publishing says a second edition. And second edition really is a response to fifth edition D&D because Pathfinder never felt the need to respond to fourth edition. Pathfinder was the response to fourth edition. And it was the most popular RPG on the market for a while. I've made videos about why that was, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that 3 and 3.5 hurt D&D a lot by overcomplicating it and basically destroying their new player base. And then 4th edition hurt D&D by alienating their old player base. But open their market to a new player base because 4E was significantly easier to get into than 3 and 3.5. However, it had already gotten a reputation from 3 and 3.5 of being extremely complicated to get into, and the third edition purists did everything they could to bash and blacklist for fourth edition in general. So they would say things like it's massively complicated. It's super fun. It's just a combat simulator. None of those things were true. I love fourth edition, and I will debate people to death about the fact that fourth edition is one of the more balanced D&D editions. It didn't do everything perfectly, but it's great. Effectively, Pathfinder took all of the people that gave up D&D for fourth edition and a lot of the people from 3 and 3.5 because it was effectively this is the same thing. But second edition, they lost a ton of people to fifth edition because, to be blunt, it's a better design system than the original Pathfinder. It's easier to get into. There's less rules bloat. There's not really a ton of complexity for complexity's sake. And so, due to the fact that they were losing just a massive amount of their player base to 5th edition, they decided to create 2nd edition, which actually takes some ideas from 5th edition in an attempt to, make a better 5th edition, because that's what Pathfinder was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a better D&D. And for the most part, if you compare it to 3 and the 3.5, there are a lot of arguments to be made that would support the idea that Pathfinder was just a better version of D&D. Now, I still tend to prefer 3 and the 3.5 just from a familiarity standpoint. But I personally would be really hard pressed to argue that D&D was actually, because they both do the exact same thing and they use effectively the same system, that it was a better rules system than Pathfinder, because I don't think it is. I think Pathfinder improved upon just about everything that the 3.5 had. So, 2nd edition is effectively supposed to be a better 5th edition. And I think that's what I want to do in this video. This video is probably going to be relatively long because, oh dear God, is this complicated. And that's one of the things I'm going to keep bringing up over and over again. Compared to 5th edition, 2nd edition Pathfinder is monumentally complicated. Like, oh dear God, is it complicated, and there are all these, you're going to hear the term floating modifiers. Floating modifiers are modifiers that you can't list on your character sheet because they will change based on the situation. We call them floating because they only exist for a certain amount of time, then they just kind of float away. So a floating modifier that was really common in the original Pathfinder was firing into melee. This is something that ranged attackers had to worry about. If they were firing upon a creature that was already in melee, and this, I'm actually not sure if this is in Pathfinder. I know it was in the 3rd edition. But if they were firing into at a creature that was in melee with another creature, they would get a minus, I believe, is a -2 to the attack roll. If they fired against a creature that was not currently in melee with another creature, then that modifier wasn't there. So if they had multiple attacks they could do on their turn, and one shot was against a creature in melee, and one shot was against a creature not in melee, those would be different attack rolls. And that was one floating modifier. The thing about 3rd edition, and by definition Pathfinder, was you could have multiple floating modifiers on the same attack roll, and they weren't always negative modifiers. You could have positive floating modifiers as well, but it effectively meant that every single roll you made could be a different number that you had to add, and a different calculation, which would make combat become significantly longer, because you have to go, okay, I make my roll, okay, that's my number on the d20. Now I get my bonus from this, I get my bonus from this, and this is my attack bonus, and this is and it just gets massively complicated. That's one of the things that 5th edition did. What it was basically, you get your modifier and you get your proficiency bonus. That's it. And those will not change unless you level up, or you do something that, like, drink a potion that gives you a higher strength score, or even like using a magic item, because the attunement process takes an hour. That will never happen in the middle of combat. So combat tends to run much faster in 5th edition than it ever did in the third edition because you didn't have to worry about floating modifiers. We will see a lot of floating modifiers in here, and they give them all different names, which is even more fun. That's another thing I found about Pathfinder second edition is they like to give names to their modifiers and then just ignore the fact that they're modifiers. And I'll tell you what I mean in just a second. So, in order to compare these, easiest for me, I went and I opened up the book and I learned about the monk class in Pathfinder second edition. I'm a monk player. I've played monks in second edition. I've played them in the third edition. I played them in fourth edition, though I didn't learn how to properly play a monk in fourth edition until after I started playing fifth edition, because oh god, were they complicated in there. It was one of the few times where fourth edition just made things confusing. And you guys know I play monks in fifth edition. That's my class. So monk is going to be the most comfortable character for me to look at. Now, in Pathfinder second edition, one thing I was actually a little bit surprised is I believe they actually have less classes than D&D fifth edition, but that's only by one. So I found that a little bit surprising. They have 12 classes. D&D had 13, I believe, at the initial part. I will count just to be on the so 1 to 2 to 3 4 5 6 to 7 8 and then 9 to 10 11 to 12. Oh no, fifth edition now has 13, technically 14 if you count the blood hunter that's listed under the D&D Beyond, but they have 13 now with the artificer. They had 12 when they launched. Second edition has 12 when they launched, so pretty even. And the classes themselves are pretty close. I mean, you have the equivalents for the most part. They don't have a warlock, but they have an alchemist. Other than that, everything else is kind of a one-to-one translation. So I'm going to be going over building a monk in second edition Pathfinder and comparing it to building a monk in fifth edition. Now, I've already done D&D deep dives on fifth edition monks, so I'm not going to go through absolutely everything. I have the D&D Beyond page for the monk up here, so I have something I can go off of, but for the most part, yeah, I'm not going to go into too much detail on building the 5e monk simply because I've done that so much. So yeah, the first thing I want to show you guys, just to kind of compare between the two, is first things first. Pathfinder is pretty. It is super gorgeous, and if you want to know what I mean by that, I would like to show you this. This is the Pathfinder character sheet. Now, if we ignore the cover art here, because that's just cover art, that's not really part of the character sheet, but let's be honest here, it's gorgeous cover art. And the best thing about this, you know what that character is? That is a monk. In Pathfinder, on their character sheet Path, they have a monk on the cover. Pathfinder wins. End of story. No. But yeah, so you have an alchemist, you have a champion, you have, I'm not sure which class that is, to be blunt, and then you have a monk. It's one of their caster classes. It might be a wizard. Oh wait, I can tell you. Hold please. No, that's a sorcerer. So that's a sorcerer. So the first things first, D&D rolls really heavily into their kind of classic classes. You have your fighter, your wizard, your rogue, your cleric, and that's generally what you will see on most the things. Every so often you'll see maybe a ranger or something like that. But the more exotic classes don't show up on their character, their cover art. So I like this. They have classes that are a little bit more unique. It's one of the selling points of Pathfinder. They sell it for their customizability and its uniqueness. And I think the cover art really expresses that. Now, when we go to the actual character sheet, first of all, this is form fillable. Is it? No, it is not form fillable. That's a huge letdown to me. They may have a form fillable sheet, and I just don't have it. But I because of my tremor, I do not write my character sheets, and I haven't for years. I do form fillables, where I just type everything in, because otherwise you can't read my character sheets, and it takes me for forever. Like filling out checks when I have to pay with a check for certain things takes me forever. Because I have to very slowly write everything because my tremor. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that, but that's not why we're showing this. So this is what the first page of the character sheet looks like, and it is gorgeous. I love the AC is in the middle of a piece of armor. I would have liked to see more stuff like that. I've actually seen alternate 5th edition character sheets that are made for people with like dyslexia and the things like that rely less on text and more on pictures. And they do things like they'll have a piece of armor and they'll have AC, and that's where you list your AC to just make it easier for people with dyslexia. I like that. That is an accessibility option, and I think it's really, really good. So I like the fact that they do this. I think aesthetically it looks nice. Your hit points are in a little heart. Your perception is, you have a little hourglass there for your perception score. All of those things I think are just wonderful. This stuff right here, this is where you first start realizing just how crazy the modifiers are. So this is a place for your melee attacks. This is the name of the weapon. This is the actual modifier. Now, again, the modifier that you put there is not going to be the modifier that you add, because just about every single attack you make is going to have a floating modifier. So this is a starting point. But even with this starting point, you add your strength modifier, or if it's a finesse weapon, you can add your dexterity. You add your proficiency, which can be trained, expert, master, or legendary. Now, the reason that they have this stuff and this is your proficiency changes. If you're untrained, your proficiency is always just as a 0. But the way the proficiency system in here works is if you are trained or higher, so trained, expert, master, or legendary, your proficiency is half of your level, I think rounded down. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know there are Pathfinder people here. If I get things wrong, put it in the comments below. I won't change the video because it'll already be recorded, but other people will know, and I will acknowledge you that I got some things wrong. Now, specifically, I'm asking for mechanics. I'm not asking for theory or opinion, because if you just think my opinion of things are wrong, go ahead and put that in the comments below. But I will probably, that will be things that I will actually debate you on. As far as like straight up rules stuff, I will defer to the experts. This proficiency, I'm assuming the way you would write it is your proficiency here is going to be whatever half your level is. So every 2 levels, that's going to go up. And then for trained, you just add a flat plus to 2 to that. So once you get to trained, you get +2 plus half your level, which for me is a little bit confusing, but okay, that's when you talk about bounded accuracy and things like that, I guess it makes sense. But then for expert, it's just another 2. For master, it's just another 2. And for legendary, it's just another 2. So if effectively, if we're, all of this is dealing with a 20-sided die, which effectively gives you 5% intervals of change. That means the difference between someone who is trained in the use of an item and someone who is an expert in the use of an item, they only have a 10% increase in their ability to do something. Whereas in 5th edition, when you are proficient in something, or trained would be a similar thing, you add your proficiency bonus, which gets higher the higher your level is. So it starts at just a 10% bump. But as you get higher, it'll eventually go up to a 30% bump without having to get additional things. So when you look at this, theoretically, a legendary, because it's plus, at that point it's +8, which would be a 40% bump. However, you also have the fact that your proficiency is half your level, and so that's increasing there. And they have wider, they have much higher DCs and things like that. Like a basic DC for a legendary character is a DC 40. DC 40 doesn't exist in 5th edition. The number is too high. DC 30 is considered impossible. So the math doesn't quite factor out, and because they use larger numbers, the 10% is actually even less, because you're not doing a spread of 1 to 20. You're actually doing a spread significantly larger. I'm not going to get into all of the math, because frankly I don't understand a lot of it. But easy to use numbers. Anytime you hear trained, which you'll hear tons, that means you add 2 plus half your level. Expert is 4 plus half your level. Master is 6 plus half your level. Legendary is 8 plus half your level. So a 20th level legendary, or legendarily trained, in athletics would add 18 plus their strength modifier to that. So yes, much bigger numbers into the 2nd edition. So when we look at the D&D character sheet, we only really need to look at this sheet here, because these are technically the equivalent sheets. And it's not the same. They have a color version of the character sheet. I'm using a black and white one because that's the one I use. It's form fulfillable because this is literally the character sheet I use. So I like form fulfillables. But the fanciest thing they do is they have the little dragon and the Dungeons & Dragons logo, and that's it. Even on the color, the sheet that has color, you really only have red on there in a couple different sections. Like it's really just not that expansive. So aesthetic wise, I mean, this is just gorgeous. It's really, really nice, and I like it. There are D&D character sheets, not put out by Wizards of the Coast, but there are D&D character sheets you can get, which are significantly more elaborate and pretty than this. But it does go to show you the amount that Paizo puts into aesthetic design, I think, is a little bit higher than Wizards of the Coast, at least on mundane things like a character sheet. Now, the other thing you learn about the character sheets is just how complex the two systems are. For 5th edition, you can literally play an entire game only ever looking at this sheet. If you're a spellcaster, you may look at this sheet. That is it. To play your entire campaign, you will only ever need a double-sided piece of paper. That's it. It's super simple and easy to figure out. And a lot of things on here you won't use. A lot of people do not use personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. It's background stuff. You don't technically need it. That's why this entire page here people don't use, because this is just description stuff about your character. You can even put a portrait there. On the other hand, this stuff you will use constantly. Those are your skills. These are your abilities. These are your attacks. This is your monies and your inventory. And then your hit points, armor class, initiative. So you will use this stuff here, this a little more, and then this. That's about it. And you can run an entire campaign off that. For Pathfinder, this you will use in combat a lot. And you know what? You'll probably use this because this is your class feats and abilities. You have skill feats. You have general feats. You have ancestry feats. This is that second page that nobody ever uses, though I do like the fact that they have a campaign notes. This is a section that's labeled a little bit better. They don't have a specific section in here that's labeled campaign notes, and that's bad. I know most players actually use this page, will use most of it for their campaign notes. So very, very useful to have your campaign notes. So this is useful. I think it's a little bit more useful than the unused page on the other one. But I would assume a lot of second edition players don't use that. This is a lot. And you will use this often because all your class features are here. In the D&D, your class features, like I put all my class features right here. I have a 17th level character. I have all my class features and my feats in this little box, and I've never had an issue. Now, I don't put the full descriptions of everything. I just list them so I know, and I can look them up later. That is literally all you have room to do here, is to just list them. You can't really put full descriptions or anything like that. As you can see, there's countless numbers of feats. We'll get into that in just a second. This isn't the last page. No, here is your inventory. That's probably fairly useful. But this actually, you have slots like a video game, which is one of the things that they would accuse 4th edition. A lot of 3rd edition purists and Pathfinder players sometimes would accuse 4th edition of just being an MMO on a tabletop. Yeah, it's just the video game, which it wasn't and never was. But that was their argument. You have slots here like that. If you guys watched me play some of the games I've played, that is eerily similar to let's see, Dungeon Hack. Your character portrait looks very, very similar to that. Eye of the Beholder. And those are all based on advanced first edition to Dungeons and Dragons. So it's not even like a new concept. So who's the video game now? But to be blunt, I like this. I really do. Again, aesthetically, I think this looks better than just listing your equipment. Visually, it's a nice organizational thing. But oh dear God, and this I hate. There's an encumbrance thing in 5th edition. I never use those rules. I despise them. Encumbrance is the dumbest thing in the world. I don't care if it's more realistic. You're throwing fireballs and you're fighting dragons. Forget about the damn encumbrance. It's just there to limit you in a really boring way. But bulk is there. I don't know. It's someone that plays this 2nd edition. Is bulk optional like encumbrances in 5th edition, or let's say optional in the fact that there are a lot of DMs that just never use the encumbrance rules, or is bulk something you have to deal with in 2nd edition? Let me know in the comments below, because I hate it. So that's that. This is your spells. Now, again, we have a spells page in here. It's pretty simple. You list your slots there. You can mark off how many slots you've used there. These are all your spells. If they're prepared, if they're not, it's really simple. You have your spellcasting ability, your save DC, your attack bonus. It's massively simple. This, you have to pick which tradition you do. Now, again, someone with Pathfinder knowledge can correct me in the comments below. From what I've read, because I read through the spell section, because monks get spells, we'll get to it. And they get to choose whether they're divine spells or occult spells. But doesn't actually change how the spell works. It seems like it's a flavor to the thing. Like, your tradition is basically where you get your magic from. Divine, you get it from God. Occult, you get it from weird shit. Arcane, you get it from just magic. And primal, you get it from the earth. So druids are primal. Clerics are divine. Wizards are arcane. And apparently bards are a occult. Like, I would have thought warlock would be a occult, but no, it's bards. So that's interesting. Again, someone with Pathfinder knowledge, is there a mechanical difference between arcane, occult, primal, and divine, or is it just a flavor of the thing? Because, like I said, monks get to choose whether they are divine or occult. Their key spells are divine or occult, and it doesn't look like it changes the spells in any way, shape, or form. They work the exact same way. They do the same damage. You make this as the same rolls. It seems like it's just a flavor to the thing, but maybe that's just a monk thing, and maybe the other classes actually have it. And I read the section in the spellcasting part of the book, and it was a sidebar that just it looked like flavor. So let me know. You've got your spell DC, which is going to be different than your, don't they have it on here? Yeah, your class DC, which you declare a key ability score, which I think you can choose. I don't know. Trained in monk class DC. Oh, key ability is strength or dexterity for the monk. So I think you actually get to choose your key ability, which is the thing you add to your class DC. And then you have proficiency and everything else to do the class DC. So any abilities you have built on your class will have a class DC. I actually kind of like this over... I mean, it's effectively very, very similar to 5th edition, where anytime they give you an ability that's not a spellcasting ability, they will tell you, oh, by the way, your this ability is 8 plus your proficiency bonus, plus your plus this modifier. So it does this is the same thing, but I like having it on the character sheet, just having it kind of a default thing for all classes to have a class DC. I think that streamlines. So there's something I like about Pathfinder. Yeah, you have your spell slots per day, which you put up here. This is where you list your cantrips. Focus spells. Focus is a whole other thing, because that's how monks cast spells, is they use focus, which effectively is confusing, to say the least. When you learn a key spell, you will get a focus point. You learn key spells by taking certain class feats, meaning you can build a monk that has no key spells, or you can build a monk that is entirely reliant on key spells. So that, I think, is kind of interesting. But the way focus works is you can have up to 3 focus points. Anytime you cast a focus spell, it uses a focus point. The only way you can get focus points back is by meditating for 10 minutes. And you get 1 focus point back for every 10 minutes you meditate. I think the skill you actually use is called refocus. So yeah, it's interesting. I guess it's kind of like a spell slot system, but not like it just seems confusing to me. I actually prefer the key point system of 5th edition, because a lot of monks can cast spells and they just attach a key point value to a spell. So it's like, oh, to cast this spell, you spend 2 key points. Or to cast this spell, you cast 4 key points. You can cast them at higher levels. It's super simple. And then to get your key points back, you take a short rest. Everything in 5th edition is based on either you get it back on a short rest or a long rest. There's no individual actions you have to take or anything. Just short rest, long rest. It's super simple, and I like it that way. So yeah, focus spells are important for the monk specifically because that's how they cast their spells. If they take that, when we discuss the feats, we will go over that. This isn't even the end though, because there's the rest of your spells. Because again, on the fifth edition, you just kind of list this as a spell, which again, I can I tend to prefer this route because I will memorize most of the spells that I use because they're generally not that complicated. And if I need a refresher, I can just look it up really quick in one of my books or on D&D Beyond, and it becomes super easy. I think actually rewriting everything out, for me personally, I don't know why, but I have this really strong of aversion to writing things down. Like it causes me actual anxiety to do it. I don't know why. It just really bothers me to do it, and it's something I've always this has had. It's one of the reasons I almost never did homework. I will write things down. Like it's not like I can't write things. I have pages and pages of lore for my campaigns. But just I don't know, taking notes and things like that has always really bothered me. So recopying Sis's stuff into my spell book like this would annoy the hell out of me. So that's why I like the other one where I just list the name. Obviously, you don't have to write everything down. You can just write the name. But it's just this is nowhere near as clean as the 5th edition one. It doesn't, it doesn't group it into levels or anything like that. So I think this is just a little more chaotic than I would really like. Yeah. So that's that. And then there's more stuff. And then they have example character sheets. Like this is an example alchemist sheet. And these are all the stuff alchemists could get. There's barbarian. Oh, look, it's a monk. We're not going to look at these character sheets again, but they have it. It's really interesting. Like I said, aesthetically, I think it's a lot better, but I think it's really easy to see. The massive difference between 5th edition and Pathfinder is just how much extra stuff you need in Pathfinder to do literally the exact same thing that you would do in 5th edition. There's just 7 extra steps in Pathfinder. And that's where I get this idea of complexities for complexity's sake. Is a detriment rather than an advantage. A lot of people will argue the more complex something is, the more customizable it is, the more advanced it is, and none of that is true. To a certain point, you do eventually you do need some complexity to make customizability. The idea of a light switch versus a dial. Light switch has 2 settings, on, off, whereas a dial will allow you to sometimes, if it's analog, it'll let you go an entire range. If it's digital, it will have multiple steps. The more steps you get in, the more you can customize your lighting. But eventually, you will get to the point where adding, if you've got, you have a digital one that goes from 1 to 100, and then you have another digital one that goes from 1 to 2, or 0 to 1,000 and 0 to 100. How much more useful is it going to be a setting at 75 or a setting at 752? Your eyes aren't going to be able to notice the difference between 75 and 752, despite the fact that they're relatively close. And that's what I think Pathfinder has always gotten wrong. That's what 3rd edition got wrong, was they just started adding more and more rules, saying, well, this will make it that much more customizable. But eventually, you start adding customizations that simply make it harder to do things rather than make it so that you're more specialized. I will give examples as we could go through, but yeah, this is 40 minutes in, guys, and we haven't even gotten to the monk. That's how complicated this is. So yeah, let's actually go into the monk itself. I'm gonna go back to this because we're not looking at that anymore. So classes are unbelievably complex in second edition, but they start pretty simply when you look at the first page. You have your key ability. When you build the character, the default method for building is actually a variation on the point buy system. Again, they change words. They make numbers mean, or they make words mean numbers. And this is something you just see constantly in this, where they hide the fact that there's massive amounts of numbers in this book by using words to represent numbers. Like I said, trained. You'll hear trained all the time. You are, like in the first thing, you get your initial proficiencies. You are trained in perception. That means you get a +2 to perception. It's all trained means. You're an expert in fortitude, reflex, and will saves. You had a +4 to your will saves. That's all it means. They could have just said you get a +4 to your will saves, but no, it is you're an expert in them. All expert means is +4. And when you're actually building your character, I have to go all the way back to... I don't want alignment. I want ability scores. 19 and 20. I think that's where I want to go. 6 ability scores, reading rules. I'm just looking for the damn word. That's all I want. Build a character. Create a concept. I did that. Pick a background. Start building up ability scores. Start at 10. All right, so you'll apply ability boosts, which increase a score by 2, and ability flaws, which decrease a score by 2. So boost means +1, flaw means minus, or boost means +2, flaw means -2. Again, we already have representation of these things. They're numbers, but they replace numbers with words, which forces you to have a glossary open when you're building a character, because you can't just go, no, you have to know that trained means +2. And boost also means +2, but it's a different +2 than the trained +2. Now, the other thing that's really fun of this is the boosts get different, I thought. Booty boosts and flaws on page 20. All right. Oh, here it is. Ability boosts. You can't have a score higher than an 18. I thought as you got higher. Yeah, that's what it is. So from 10 to 18, ability boost means +2. Once you hit 18, ability boost means +1. So now the same word has 2 different number of values. So not only have they translated numbers into words, now they take the words and they redefine the numbers that they're attached to based on effectively floating modifiers. So yeah, like that really irks me, because it literally is just a barrier to entry. If you're familiar with the point buy system, which they use in 5th edition, they've used all the way since 3rd edition is where first came out. It's really simple. To increase any ability, you start out, I think you start out at 8. And to increase any ability up to 14, it takes 1 point. It costs 2 points to increase anything from above 14 to 16. Getting above 16 cost, I think, the 3 points. In third edition, you can't do that in fifth edition. You can't start in point by system. You can't start with a score above a 16. Yeah, that's really simple. It uses numbers instead of using words that mean numbers. So yeah, that just annoys the hell of me that everything in this book is they will use words that actually just mean numbers, and then you have to go look up the words, and then you realize that's a number, and then you have to go back and put the numbers in, but then you have to change them into words again, and it's just confusing. They really enjoy renaming the things in this. So the monk, your initial proficiencies. You're trained in perception, so you have a +2 perception. So your base perception score is going to be 12, just based on the months. Now, you get additional things from your background will give you stuff. Your ancestry, which is your race in 5th edition, will give you stuff. So this is not everything. Very similar to 5th edition. You need a combination of your background and your race or ancestry in this case to actually create the character. I'm not going to go through those because that's another can of worms. It'll take another 4 hours to explain. We're just going to be talking about the monk itself. Another thing I found is interesting. 5th edition backgrounds, you get skill proficiencies from your backgrounds. In Pathfinder 2nd edition, you actually can get ability score increases from your background. So backgrounds are even more important in Pathfinder 2nd edition than they are in 5th edition to D&D. Going forward, 5th edition means D&D, 2nd edition means Pathfinder, not 2nd edition to D&D, okay? So I do find that interesting. I actually like that. I think a lot of people undervalue backgrounds. It's why I did a whole series and did a D&D deep dive about backgrounds, because a lot of people just choose them, think of them as something that you get at first level and then you throw away. So I like them being a little bit more involved here. I don't quite like how crazy involved they are, but you know, again, this is Pathfinder. So, training perception, saving throws. Expert in fortitude, reflex, and will, so +4 for your saving throws. And again, as you gain levels, you'll also get half your level for those as well. So once you hit level 2, you will be +5 on fortitude saves. Skills, you're trained in a number of skills equal to 4 plus your intelligence modifier. And this is where it's different from both 3rd edition D&D and 5th edition, where 5th edition you actually have class skills where you can be trained, but you have a subset of skills that you can actually pick. Same is true in 3rd edition, though in the 3rd edition you would actually contribute skill points. And your class skills were a 1-to-1, whereas non-class skills you would have to pay 2 points to go up 1 rank. It was just a lot of math into the 3rd edition. I believe it's the same thing in Pathfinder, the original. So 2nd edition, I like the fact that they're going. They got rid of individual skill points and are now just using this training system. That is a simplification. Which is what 5th edition was all about, was simplifying and just streamlining the process so you can actually have fun. So I do like the whole expert thing. Not a fan. This is a holdover from the 3rd edition and original Pathfinder. Is how many skills you're trained in is based on your intelligence. So intelligence-based classes are always going to be trained in a lot more skills than non-intelligence based things. And if you have a negative intelligence modifier, you actually are trained in less skills. Which, again, the argument is going to be, well, duh, smart people just know more stuff. But there are things like acrobatics is not intelligence based. I've known some incredibly stupid people that were unbelievably acrobatic. The same is true about athletics. Um, I've known some incredibly stupid people that were master craftsmen. They didn't know a damn the thing about books and stuff like that, but they could build unbelievably amazing the things. Um, and then things like deception. Yes, there is an intelligence aspect to being able to lie effectively, but it's generally a lot more about memory than actual intelligence and knowledge. And I know a lot of people that, again, are not very smart, but are just very good at lying or persuading people. Um, and yeah, so like the idea that you're being book smart automatically makes you better at anything is a fallacy. Um, it's one that really smart people like to lean into really, really hard because it makes them feel better about the fact that they've specialized in just being book smart. While other people have been doing things like getting real world experience. It's one of the reasons why in the US, the certifications um, are actually more important than actually knowing how to do your job. It's one of the reasons why it's extremely common for someone with like an MBA in the retail field to be given a store to run and then tank it because they learned all this stuff and they have a master's of business administration. It sounds like this is something that would be really, really useful for a manager to have, but it teaches no real world skills at all. I know this because I have a degree in business management. And the vast majority of the things I learned in there are completely worthless because before getting my degree in business management, it's actually a degree in business marketing management. So I also learned economics and marketing at the same time. Before doing that, I spent 5 years as a manager. And I learned what works and what doesn't from being a manager. And I was really, really good. And yeah, I would read these textbooks that would say, oh, you should do this, this, and this. And I go, well, that's a horrible idea. That never works. That never works. That never works. The majority of the things I learned in my business management classes, I would never use in the real world because they were just bad theoretical advice. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the idea that a higher intelligence score gives you more skills. Now, from what Taking to 20 says, because it's just a combat simulator anyways, it doesn't really matter what skills you got. So I guess that's a balancing thing, that skills are useless anyways. But yeah, if they're going to give me an entire section and an entire feat system based on your skills, I want as many as I can get. But again, trained only means +2 anyway. So now, that is a bit of a misnomer because I did read over this skill section. And there's actually, they list all the different things, which is very common of Pathfinder in 3 and 5. It's basically, if there isn't a rule for it, you can't do it. So there's a rule for everything. And they actually, they list every single ability and every skill. And then they have a list of all the things you can do using that skill. And there's certain things that you can use it, you can be untrained and do it. And there's certain things that you have to be trained in order to do it. Which, again, is another thing that just gets really, really annoying because it's just a way to limit people. It doesn't make the game more fun. It's just a way, well, you can't do that. And anyone that's run, that's been a DM knows, the more often you tell your players you can't do that, the less fun they're going to have. Allowing them to try something and fail at it is a significantly better way to deal with them trying to do something they shouldn't be able to do than just telling them, no, you can't do that. And so I generally tend to prefer to have them make rolls, and if they are untrained, or if they're not proficient in that particular skill, the DC is just higher, which does mean they can still succeed if they roll high enough, which can also be a fun thing. But just telling them, no, you can't do it, I think is just really bad DMing, and that's built into the system here. So attacks, this is where things get a little bit, I don't know, interesting, I guess. You're trained in simple weapons. You're trained in unarmed attacks. Unarmed attacks don't count as weapons, but they're listed on the weapon page, and I'm not going to get into that, because anyone that's played 5th edition knows unarmed strikes are confusing in 5th edition, and they're confusing in Pathfinder 2nd edition. So I don't think either one really has a leg up here. So it just means that when you attack with this a simple weapon, you'll get a +2, and when you attack with an unarmed attack, you'll get a +2. It's called trained, but you get a +2. And then you're untrained in all armor, so you can't wear armor, as I assume what that means. But you're an expert in unarmored defense, which means you get a +4 to your AC when you're unarmored. Which you could just say, yeah, your AC is 14 and goes up by 1 every other level. No, you are an expert in unarmored defense, which means your AC is 14 and goes up +1 every other level. Why'd you have to say expert? Well, because words mean numbers. Yeah, I realize I'm being really antagonistic on this. A lot of this is from years and years of 3rd edition purist and Pathfinder people literally screaming at me because I liked 4th edition. So I have a lot of pent up anger for Pathfinder. Like I said, I like a lot of the ideas behind Pathfinder, specifically 2nd edition. I think it's really, really interesting. I just really, really don't like the idea that the complexity makes it more customizable. It doesn't. It just makes it more complex. And so if I seem acerbic and a little bit aggressive towards it, that's why. I've heard so often, I've literally had it beaten into me. And by literally, I actually mean the word literally. People have hit me as they have told me it is more customizable. Not like punched me in the face, but I've had people get strong enough that they've actually made contact with me to tell me it's more customizable, and it's not. So that's why I may seem a little bit against Pathfinder in general. There are members of your fandom that do not represent you well. Let me put it that way. So that's the first page. And for the most part, that seems pretty simple. Once you learn that trained and expert means +2 and +4, this makes a lot more sense. So you pick, do you want to be a strength or a dex-based monk? That's going to be super important for your feats later on. I like dex-based monks. The other thing I'm not particularly fond about is if you are a dex-based monk, you still need strength. Because just like 3rd edition and Pathfinder, when you're making melee attacks, if you're using a finesse weapon, they got rid of the weapon finesse feats that you were required to take to use your dexterity for your attack rolls. So that's nice. I really, really enjoy that. However, they still kept the fact that your damage modifier is always strength. Even if you are using a finesse weapon using dexterity. In 5th edition, a finesse weapon means you can use dexterity for both the attack rolls and damage rolls. Which actually, if you're going for realism, is more accurate. As a martial artist, I can tell you right now, strength, depending on the style you choose and the specific attacks you're doing, does not factor into a lot of your attacks. Your agility and control, and specifically your ability to focus the force that you make to the exact point that you want is going to affect how much damage you do to your opponent. A lot more than just raw brute strength. To be perfectly honest, the reason why a lot of martial artists are not massive, depending on the martial arts, I know a lot of jiu-jitsu guys specifically tend to be really massive, but that's because it's a strength. It's a grappling sport, and size does confer a very, very large advantage. But for the most part, a lot of martial arts don't tend to be massive. They're muscular, don't get me wrong, but it's very lean muscle, and it's very kind of skinny muscle, simply because all that muscle memory they have is not from lifting heavy things. It's from having very, very specific control over their movements. So, no, I don't think it's more realistic that strength is the only thing that modifies your damage. Dexterity is just as important if you're using a weapon that is based on dexterity. A rapier is going to do a lot more damage depending on where you poke them than how hard you shove it into them. That's just how it works. So, yeah, and then you're trained in your monk class DC, so your base DC for your monk class starts at 12. Super simple. They have a little table. It's actually not as elaborate as the tables for 5th edition classes, mostly because it says take a feat. Take this kind of feat. That's the thing. There are 4 different kinds of feats that you take in this game. You have your class feats, which you get 1 at level 1, and then a class feat every even numbered level. You have skill feats, which you get at second level and are also every even numbered level. You have ancestry feats, which you get at first level, and you get when you choose your ancestry. And then you get them at 5th, 9th, 13th, and 17th level, which the way they describe it in here is really, really confusing. And then you have your general feats, which you get at 3rd level, and then every 4 levels after the 3rd level. And now I'm starting to understand why they replace their numbers with words, because when they do use numbers, they use weird numbers that don't make sense. You get a general feat at 3rd level, and then every 4 levels, which turns into 3, 7, 11, 15, and a 19, which is almost the prime numbers series. But they decided 13 wasn't a nice one. 15 isn't a prime number, and then they went into a 19 again. So to be blunt, I almost would prefer them to use the prime number series for general feats, because then at least it would follow a recognizable pattern. And that's just the math geek in me. Or maybe one of these could go on a logarithmic scale, because that would be fun. Like, it annoys me just how much they create these ideas and say that, well, it makes it very, very customizable. Not really. It just means if I want to do something, I have to take I have to do twice as many things to be able to do the exact same thing in 5th edition that I would in 2nd edition Pathfinder. So let's actually get to this. So, class features, they specifically list your ancestry and background stuff. They remind you, oh, by the way, go back to the ancestry part of the book and the background part of the book, because you need those. It talks about your initial proficiencies, which are on the first page. And then your first feature, which you get a feature on each of your odd numbered levels for your class. So even numbers, you will choose a feat, a class feat, and a skill feat. Odd number ones, you will choose a feature. Or you will get a feature. You have no choice. The features are set. The first feature is flurry of blows. Uh, Basic monk thing. Everybody knows flurry of blows has been around for forever. Gives them extra attacks. Right? Wrong-ish. Flurry of blows. Now, this is where something I actually think is kind of interesting. I don't think it's better or worse than 5th edition, but it is interesting. They use a 3-action system where every turn you have 3 actions. You don't have different kinds of actions where in 5th edition you have 3 actions every turn as well. You have a move, you have an action, and you have a bonus action. And each one has different things you can do with it. Things you can use your bonus action for, you can't use your action for. So in that specific instance, they do put some limitations there and add a little complexity because of it. So in this particular instance, they're actually removing limitations and actually creating less complexity initially by having, well, you just have actions. However, then they do the things like this. So Flurry of Blow uses a single action. Now, some abilities use multiple actions. You can have abilities that have 1 action or 2 actions or 3 actions. Because of that, you have to choose. Because if you want to move, you need to take the stride action, which uses 1 action. So if you don't move, you still have the 3 actions. So maybe you want to take the strike action. The strike action is making it an attack. It takes 1 action. But if you've got the 3 actions, you can strike the 3 times. However, there are multiple attack penalties. That's a floating modifier. Remember those floating modifiers we were talking about? Here's our first floating modifier. It's called the multiple attack penalty. Basically, if you make an attack, and then you make a second attack on that same term, like you would with Flurry of Blows, your second attack gets a -5 to its attack roll. Which, if your first, if your key ability score, which is going to be what you're using for your attacking for the monk, if your key ability score is 18, which is the highest you can have, which is what I'm assuming most people will make their characters, is they will start with 1 score in an 18. It just makes sense to me. You will have a +6 because you're trained in unarmed strikes, and that's what we're using with Flurry of Blows. You can also use monk weapons. We're not going to get into that right now. So you have a +6 on your first attack. Your second attack is a +1. Which means your second attack, for anyone with an AC, and I don't know what the ACs are like for low-level monsters here. I know in 5th edition, most monsters are going to have between a 14 and a 16 AC, even at low levels. Due to the fact that numbers get really, really big, I'm going to assume the same thing for 2nd edition here. So again, Pathfinder experts, if I'm wrong, put it in the comments below. That means if you have an AC 16, which is, again, not a crazy thing to happen for first level, you have to roll a 15 or higher. You have a 70% chance of failure on your second attack. If I was playing something like, I don't know, XCOM, and I had a 30% chance to hit something, I wouldn't take the shot. I can't see that ever being a good idea. Now, one of the nice things about Unarmed Strike is they have the Agile trait for the weapon. That's another thing that annoys the hell out of me, is weapons have, there is a 2-page long list of the different traits you can have for your weapons. And every weapon has like 4 or 5 different traits. You have finesse, but then you have things like agile, and you have backstabbing weapons and backswing weapons. Like it's unbelievably complicated. And most of them are really minor things. Like a finesse weapon, you can use your dexterity for. A backswing weapon, if you miss with an attack with a backswing weapon and you make another attack with it that to the turn, you get a +1 for the floating modifier. Another floating modifier, they don't call it a floating modifier, I can't remember, a conditional modifier. It's a floating modifier. So even attacking with the same weapon against the same target in the same turn, you're rolling two different things. And then depending on the weapon you're using, you roll. Oh, so many extra numbers that are not necessary. So Flurry of Blows. It is a single action, but you get to make two unarmed strikes for a single action. Because Flurry of Blows has the Flourish trait, traits are a big deal in this, you can only use Flurry of Blows once per turn. But it does mean if you use all your actions for attacking, you can go Flurry of Blows and then two strikes. You can make 4 attacks. Now, if you're doing them all with a monk unarmed strikes, sorry. If you do them all with unarmed strikes, those are agile. So instead of a -5, you have a -4 on your second attack. However, if you make a third attack, that turn normally would be a -10, it turns into a -8, which means at first level, if you make a third attack in a turn, you are making it, again, if you start with a +6, you're making it at a -2, meaning attacking a target with 16 AC, you have an 80% chance of failure. And then the fourth attack is still a -8. So once you've done 3 attacks, unless you have something else you want to use your action for, there's no penalty to making a fourth attack. So theoretically, monks, if they get really, really lucky, can do a lot of attacks. Now, unarmed strikes are only a D4, but that changes later on. We'll talk about that in a second. So that is the monk ability, is they can make 2 attacks for the cost of 1 action, but they're not any better at making those 2 attacks. At first level, they're probably almost never going to use Flurry of, or they'll use it, but they'll never really get a benefit from their second attack because they're going to miss a lot more often than they're going to hit. If you compare that to the 5th edition monk, they can make an unarmed strike as an attack, and then as a bonus action, they can make an unarmed strike. So it still uses. You still get effectively the same number of attacks. You have to burn an additional action compared to this. But the unarmed strike for the bonus action still gets their +5 generally for a 5th edition character. But they both get their +5. So a 5th edition monk is going to be able to attack twice per turn, just like this one, and still be able to move. However, the 5th edition monk is actually going to hit his second attack before getting to level 3 or 4 generally, before you're regularly hitting with your second attack on a turn. By the time you get to the second level with a monk, you have your Flurry of Blows, because it's not a first level ability for 5th edition monks, and that gives you a total of 3 attacks. That all are going to hit for the most part. So again, with the idea of complexity and things like that, this is a more complex system simply because you have significantly more things you can do with your actions. Whereas 5th edition, the complexity comes from where you have different kinds of actions, but you are significantly limited in what each one of those actions can do. So that simplifies it through complexity. By varying the different kinds of actions into this is an action, this is a bonus action, you add complexity to kind of allow you to do different things. But by limiting what each one does, you simplify it to go, okay, these are the kind of things you do for your action, these are things you'll do for your bonus action. This removes the complexity of different kinds of actions, but there are so many different things you can do as this is an action that it adds complexity just by sheer numbers and by all these additional modifiers that make, again, I have to admit here, this illusion of choice actually makes sense. Yes, you theoretically can make 2 attacks, but you're very rarely going to hit on the second attack. So while you could make that attack, it's not going to work. So in that particular instance, I agree with the idea of illusion of choice. Now, taking 20 took that a significant step further than just floating modifiers make it so your attacks won't hit. And I explained why I didn't agree with that before. But so that's Flurry of Blows. That's one of your features. Then we talk about monk feats. We'll get into the feats a little later. And then Powerful Fist. This is a unique thing for monks. You know how to wield your fist as a deadly weapon. Damage die for your fist changed to a d6 instead of a d4. That's kind of nice. Most people take a -2 circumstance penalty. Here's those floating modifiers. When making a lethal attack with non-lethal unarmed attacks. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. For everyone else, if you make an unarmed attack and you try to be lethal with it, you take a -2 floating modifier. So if you want to kill someone, you have you are less accurate when you're trying to kill someone than when you're trying to just knock them out, which is the exact opposite of how it works in the real world. Killing people is remarkably simple when you are smashing bits of bone and flesh into sensitive parts of their body, like their skull. It's actually more difficult to knock someone out than it is to outright kill them. Now, the lethality of certain moves, like, slamming someone's, nasal sinus bone into their skull doesn't happen. That's not a real thing. But any damage to your skull can cause permanent brain damage. Rendering someone unconscious is more difficult than actually doing significant damage. So yeah, that doesn't make sense at all. Realism is not there whatsoever. However, it doesn't matter for monks. You don't take this penalty when making lethal attacks with your fist or any unarmed attacks. So that's another thing that only monks get, is this idea that, oh, well, they do more damage with their fists. It's the same thing as 5th edition. Only 5th edition, they do a d4, and everyone else just does 1 damage. And then these guys don't take that penalty. So that's nice. One less floating modifier. There's plenty more to come. Don't worry about that. So that was first level. Second level, they talk about skill feats. So you get your skill feat at second level. You also, because it's an even numbered level, you get a monk feat. At third level, you get your general feat, which you get again at the third level, and then every 4 levels after the third level. Also at the third level, because it's an odd number, you get a feature, which is incredible movement. You get a plus 10-foot status bonus to your speed whenever you're not wearing armor. This bonus increases by 5 feet for every 4 levels you have beyond third. So again, another thing where it starts at third, but then you add 4 levels to it. Why do they like this 3 and 4 thing? That is really, really annoying. Nobody learns to count 1, 2, 3, 7, 11, 15, 19, 23. It's a bad number. It says to stop using 4 and then adding it and starting your counting at the 3. It's bad. It's bad. So increased speed. Same thing with the monk. They get a level earlier. They get it at they might get it at first level. I think I have the thing here. Let's look. Unarmored movement is second level, so they get it second instead of the third. Still kind of this is the same thing. Third edition or third level, you also get Mystic Strikes. Your unarmed attacks become magical. However, you can get past resistance to non-magical attacks. However, you still need an item such as Hand Wraps of Mighty Fists to gain an item bonus to attack rolls or increase your attack's weapon damage dice. Which I'm not getting into magic items. That's another thing that adds complexity to this. And yeah, I like that 5th edition makes magic items rare and special. Because 3rd edition, you got magic items like they were candy. and you were just constantly getting more magic items, and if you didn't have magic items, then your character was worthless. So yeah, same thing in second edition, and that's a personal opinion about the magic item the thing. I don't like just constantly going through kind of Diablo style loot where you're just constantly throwing shit away as you're getting into new shit that randomly drops into dungeons. It's not to say I don't like Diablo. I really like the Diablo and dungeon crawlers like that. They're a lot of fun. Things like looter shooters like Borderlands and stuff. Those are fun video games. But when I'm telling a story, I just don't like the idea that halfway through a dungeon you're just going to pick up a random sword and that's what you're going to use for the dungeon. Again, for a realism thing, you are significantly more deadly with the weapon you have trained with than the weapon you randomly pick up off the floor. Even if it's a higher quality made blade or anything, you will always be significantly more deadly with the weapon that you trained with, because no two swords are exactly alike. And knowing where the sweet spot on your blade is, knowing where the balance is going to be, will make you significantly better at wielding it 100% of the time. So no, I don't think that's more realistic or anything like that. That's that fantasy stuff, which again is perfectly fine. You're fighting dragons and throwing around fireballs. But again, one of the things that I was literally beaten to death with, not to death, but it was beaten into me. But what was the idea? Well, the third edition is just more realistic than fourth edition or fifth edition. No, it's not. It's more complex. It's harder to understand. That's all it is. A lot of things go exactly the opposite against realism, which is fine. This is a fantasy game. Be as unrealistic as you want, but don't slap me and say it's more realistic, because it's not. So yes, that's your Mystic Strikes. I do find that interesting because in fifth edition, you don't get magical attacks until 6th level. And I think that has everything to do with the fact that magic items are just significantly more rare in 5th edition than they are in Pathfinder. Monsters that have resistance to non-magical weapons, or maybe even immunity, again, I haven't looked at the bestiary into this, to non-magical attacks, probably just show up earlier in Pathfinder than they do in 5th edition, because you're expected to get more magic items. So I don't think that's a benefit or a curse. I think that's just a consequence of a system that uses more magic items, is that monsters with resistance to magic items just show up earlier. Going further, the other thing, at third level and every 2 levels thereafter, you gain a skill increase. You can use this increase to either become trained in one skill you're untrained in, or become an expert in one skill in which you're already trained. At 7th level, you can use the skill increase to become a master in a skill in which you're already an expert, and at 15th level, you can use them to become legendary in a skill which you're already a master. You get a +2 to a skill. Later on, you can get a +4 to a skill. Later on, you can get a +6 to a skill. Later on, you can get a +8 to a skill. That's it. They change the numbers into words, but that's all it means. And theoretically, I understand that trained is not just a +2 at this point, because trained means you also add half of your character level, which, by the way, that's stolen from 4th edition. The only difference is in 4th edition, all of your rolls were half of your character level plus a modifier, even if you were untrained in a skill. Whereas this one, if you are untrained in a skill, you are just never going to be able to use it once you get probably above like level 6. I would think, because at that point, anyone trained is going a bare minimum of a +5 to that as a skill, plus their ability score modifier. So yeah, after about level 6, I would assume, if my numbers are right, you're just physically incapable of doing something that you're not trained in. And knowing the kind of meta of Pathfinder, I'm assuming with these skill increases, which again start at level 3 and then use an even number, because everyone learns to count that way. I would assume very few people get use these skill increases to get new training unless they don't have any skills that they can upgrade to the next training ability. Again, Pathfinder people, let me know if that assumption is correct. But my understanding of the meta is specialization, hyper specialization is kind of the name of the game in Pathfinder, and that's how it was in third edition. Is you would get more skill points every time you leveled up, but you would almost never spend those skill points on anything other than the skills you picked at level 1. So I assume that's how most people do it, despite the fact you're not forced to do it that way. Again, that would be kind of an illusion of choice, though. Again, depending on how you play the game, I could see someone getting a lot of mileage out of getting at least training in things. Because again, adding an extra, +2 is, to use easy numbers, is a 10% difference. But getting training in something when you're level 10 is a +7. So yeah, I'm actually interested to hear. Do you actually take training and other skills as you get to higher levels, simply because the higher your level, the more valuable to training is? Or do you generally just focus on getting to legendary as many of the things you can? At 5th level and every 5 levels after that, again, this weird counting, though this one is a little easier, because people do learn to count by 5s, 5, 10, 15 to 20. So this will happen 4 times. You boost 4 different ability scores. You can use these boosts to increase your ability scores above 18. Boosting a score increases it by 1 if it's already 18 or above, or by 2 if it starts below 18. And again, I'm going to assume you generally will be boosting your key ability score, and maybe, again, this is a MAD class, a multi-attribute dependent class, so I could probably see if you're strength-based monks, you would increase your strength probably first, maybe your wisdom if you did a little bit of casting, and then your dexterity gets you higher armor class. Though there's enough magic items in this game that you probably, having not a super high armor class is not going to kill you nearly as much as it might in 3rd edition, where monks have such limited access to AC boosting items that dexterity is essential. So ability boost at 5th level. In addition, because 5th level is an odd level, you get alertness. Your proficiency rank for perception is increased to expert. At 5th level, you get a +2 to your perception skill. Yay! By the time you reach 5th level, you have already gotten a +2 to your perception skill, because half your level has turned from 0 to 2. So, yay! 5th level, you also get another ancestry feat, and you get expert strikes. Your proficiency ranks for unarmed attacks and simple weapons increases to expert. You get a +2 to your unarmed strikes. So your attack rolls get up a +2. 7th level, you get path to perfection. Choose fortitude, reflex, or will save. Your proficiency rank for the chosen save throw increases to master. You get a +2. But you also, when you roll a success on your chosen saving throw, you get a critical success. That's something 5th edition doesn't have. 5th edition has critical hits, critical misses. They really only matter on attack rolls. For everything else, a critical success doesn't do anything in 5th edition, and a critical failure doesn't do anything. You can technically still succeed on a critical failure on a skills check if your bonus is high enough. Bards are famous for doing it. Rogues as well, because they get minimum rolls where anything under a 10 counts as a 10. So they can roll really low and still pass scores with their expertise and minimum rolls. With 2nd edition, if you get a critical fail or a critical success, you get additional benefits. Like if you get a critical success on a saving throw against a spell, a lot of times you won't take any damage from the spell. And then if you just save from the spell, just like 5th edition, you take half damage from the spell. The saving throw specifically is something taken directly from off of a 5th edition, where instead of having a fortitude defense, which just got higher and higher, you now roll saving throws against spell attacks, and to make sure spells are still worth something, if you make your save, you still take half damage, unless it's a critical success. Critical failure, you can take. I think you can take things like double damage, just like if they had crit against you, and other bad things can happen depending on the spell or the ability. The interesting thing about 2nd edition here is a critical success is not just rolling a 20 on the d20. A critical success can also be rolling 10 above the DC, or rolling 10 below would be a critical failure. And those I actually like. Balance-wise, it does require you rebalancing spells. Because wow, it's an hour and a half. Sorry, Giga guys. We're almost done with the monk. I will do feats in tomorrow's video, just so this isn't 4 hours. And I'd still like to try and get this uploaded tonight. Having a spell that can do double damage does change balance, and that's probably that's always been an issue with spellcaster versus melee or weapon-based classes. Is the adage is fighters increase linearly, and wizards increase exponentially. Wizards start out useless until around level 5. Then they become useful, and then around level 10 to 15, they become so powerful they don't need the rest of the party anymore. And by the time, if you have a max level wizard, they don't they can take down bosses almost on their own. It's been a problem with D&D. The big reason it's not a bigger problem than it is, most people don't get to high enough levels for wizards to become so overpowered it's not fun. I haven't looked at wizards here, but judging based on the fact that wizards can get double damage, I'm going to assume the problem is back here. 4th edition was actually the absolute best at getting rid of that problem, because the powers made everyone get super powerful at high levels. 5th edition has that problem. It's not quite as extreme, but it's still a problem. I like the idea of critical saves and critical failures on successes and stuff like that. And that critical successes and critical failures are not based on you only get it when you roll it to 20. But if you roll really, really high, even if it's not a to 20, you can get a critical success. I think that's an interesting idea. I don't know if I would ever adapt it to 5th edition, because again, it unbalances the game, because the balance for spells is based on the idea that spells, you can, any saving throw based spells, you can never get you can never get double damage. And some of the really high level spells, if you get double damage on them, they can one shot Tarrasques if you really know what you're doing, and you could double damage on them. So so that's cool. Also at 7th level, you get weapons specialization, which you do 2 additional damage with weapons in the with weapons and unarmed attacks in which you are an expert. So theoretically, if you've been getting expertise in other weapons through feats and the things like that, you would be able to do 2 additional damage. The damage increases to 3 if you're master, 4 if you're legendary. So this is just a raw damage boost, which because monks can make so many attacks, and by the time you get into the 7th level, you're actually getting to the point where you can make multiple attacks in a turn and not be completely screwed. That does actually make a difference. At 9th level, you get metal strikes. Your unarmed attacks are treated as cold iron and silver, which is just another way to get around resistances. In 5th edition, We don't really have resistances beyond magic weapons. You have resistance to non-magical attacks, or attacks made by silvered weapons, or something like that. Cold iron isn't a thing in fifth edition. So again, this is another thing of complexities for complexity's sake. With the fact that the monk gets this cold iron ability, that doesn't really mean a whole lot. That, well, this monster isn't, or you got around this monster's resistance to non-magic weapons, but it's still resistance to non-cold iron weapons. Like, you can add as many resistances as you want. It doesn't make the game more complex. It simply means you have to add another trait to one of your weapons. So, yeah, I guess I get it. It's just, you can have a magic cold iron weapon and then not have to worry about this, or a magic silvered weapon. Someone that's familiar in Pathfinder, can you have a cold iron silvered weapon? Because if you can do that, then yeah, the additional resistances are just bloat. They don't actually change anything. They just make it more complex. You have to know more things to do the exact same thing, and all it does is either make them take less damage or take no damage. Doesn't it's not a tactical thing. It doesn't make the fights more interesting. It's just going, no, you can't do that. Not good game design in my book. In addition, at a 9th level, you get Monk Expertise. Your proficiency rank for your Monk class increases to Expert. You get a +2 to your class DC. And if you have key spells, your proficiency rank for your spell attack and spell DCs with the traditional magic you're using for your key spells increases to Expert. You get a +2 to your DCs. That's all it means. Again, going from untrained to trained, that's actually a thing. Everything after that is +2. That's all it means. 11th, second path to perfection, which really explains Pathfinder really, really well. Hey, we made you perfect. Now we're going to make you even more perfect. Wasn't I perfect before? But it's more complex, so it's more perfect. Choose a different saving throw other than the one you chose for your path to perfection. Your proficiency ranks for the chosen saving throw is increased to Master. And if you roll a success for the chosen saving throw, you instead roll a critical success. So it's literally the exact same thing you got at 7th level, just a second time, which makes sense for second path to perfection. But again, it's like, hey, remember that thing you did 4 levels ago? Let's do it again. But I'm 4 levels higher. Shouldn't I get something 4 times better? Nope, we're just gonna do the same thing. I made this mention in one of my D&D deep dives. If you give people a choice of 3 different options, but they're going to get the other 2 options later, what you're basically doing is heavy loading the good stuff at lower levels. So that as they get to higher levels, they're just less, they're just more underwhelmed every time they get a new ability. Because if they really wanted that, they would have taken it first. They consider that not as good as the first one they took. And the third one is going to be the least valuable to them. So you give them the least valuable ability at the highest level possible. That is just setting your players up for disappointment. Now, when you give them more options to choose from than they will ever get, then it becomes a little bit more tactical, because some things you're never going to get, and some things you're going to be able to get right away. And if they combine or they interact in one way, being able to get something later that can interact with an earlier ability makes that earlier ability more powerful, plus gives you something new you can do. So that is what I would consider good class design. Just giving them the exact same thing that they didn't choose before is boring and lazy. 13th level, Graceful Mastery. Your proficiency rank for unarmored defense increases to Master. You get a +2 bonus to your AC. That's it. In addition, at the 13th level, you get Master Strikes. Your proficiency rank for unarmored attacks and simple weapons increases to master. Now, this actually interacts with a previous ability. Remember, weapon specialization, you do 2 additional damage for things that you're an expert, 3 if you're a master, 4 if you're legendary. So in addition to getting a +2 to your attack rolls, you're also getting a +1 to your damage rolls. So that's slightly more useful. But again, you get a +2 to your attack rolls and a +1 to damage. That's it. They call it specialization and expert, but it's +2 and +1. Again, they turn numbers into words and force you to learn new words to do the exact same math. You word problems. The people that designed this must have loved word problems. At 15th level, you get greater weapon specialization. Your weapon is your damage from weapon specialization increases to 4 for expert, 6 if you're a master, 8 if you're legendary. You get a +2 to damage rolls. At this point, because you are already a master, they don't need to list expert, because you can't get this ability without being a master in unarmed strikes. So this is just additional words to make it sound more valuable than it actually is. It is just a +2 to attack rolls. This is a 15th level ability. You have gotten 15,000 experience for this character. And I don't know how long Pathfinder campaigns run. I know going from 1 to 15 in D&D, if you're running a weekly campaign, could take over a year. It could take multiple years, depending on the campaign and how it's going, how often you get to play. Let's just generalize and say it takes a year to get this far. That may be super underestimating it, but it's an easy number to use. Congratulations, you've been playing this class for a year. Here's a +2 to your damage rolls. That's it. That's all you get. You get a +2. Are you happy? And that's the, you also get a general feat at 15, so yay, +2 and a feat that literally any other class can get. Oh, boy. Super excited. And then 15th level, you get 3rd path to perfection. Want to guess what it does? I'll give you a second. What do you think that the 3rd path to perfection that it does? All right, I'll read it. Choose one of the saving throws. This is selected for path of perfection, or 2nd path of perfection. Your proficiency rank for the chosen type of saves increases to legendary. When you roll a critical failure of the chosen type of save, you get a failure instead. When you fail at the chosen type of save against an effect that deals damage, you take half damage. So they tricked you. You didn't get the 3rd to the thing. You get a +2 for your level 15th ability. You get a +2 to 1 of your saving throws, and you no longer make critical fails, which that's kind of useful. But again, it's a +2. They put a huge emphasis on numbers that are they turned into words, but the words are actually numbers. They're really, really valuable because that's all you will get at some levels is a word that means a number. 17th, you get adamantine strikes. Your unarmed attacks are treated as adamantine. This is something, Pathfinder people, I need you to explain to me because I actually looked up adamantine. And in D&D, adamantine is something, is a material. It's a really strong material that you get armor made out of. And adamantine armor effectively means if anyone rolls a crit against you and you're wearing adamantine armor, the attack still hits, but you don't get the effects of a critical hit. I went to the crafting and treasure section because that's where adamantine is listed. I went to the index, and that's the only place they listed for adamantine. And all it talked about was how valuable items are that are made of adamantine, but it didn't mention any special properties. So is adamantine another resistance thing, where there's certain creatures that you can only hit with adamantine weapons, or is it? Does it have other properties that I just didn't find while I was looking? Let me know in the comments below. But again, if it is just a resistance thing, again, it's lazy class or it's lazy game design. Oh well, you can't attack this thing. Well, why not? Well, your fists aren't the right metal. My fists aren't metal, but yeah, they're you have to use a very specific color sword to hurt this one. It only gets hurt by swords that are adamantine. Well, why? Cause it's real strong. Well, I have a magical sword that's on fire. That's not strong enough. No, it's not made of adamantine. Adamantine special. Again, I've never liked the idea of just having these increasing difficulties of, well, these monsters you can only hit with these weapons. I'm fine with, resistance against magical damage. I'm fine with lycanthropes being weak to silvered weapons, where you don't need a magic weapon to be able to do damage to them. You can just use a silvered weapon. But in 5th edition, lycanthropes can still be hurt for full damage with a magic weapon. You don't need a silvered weapon to hurt a lycanthrope. However, silvered weapons are significantly easier to get than magic weapons in 5th edition. So silvered weapons can help if you don't have a magic weapon. So yeah, if that's all it is, then if it's something more complex than that, I would like to know. Because again, the only thing I'm aware of adamantine doing is negating critical hits. So yeah. Also at 17 level, you get Graceful Legend. Your proficiency rank for unarmored defense increases to Legendary, and your proficiency rank for your monk class DC increases to Master. If you have key spells, blah, 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 you get a +2 for your 17th level ability. You get a +2 to your AC, which in 5th edition is really good because the bounded accuracy in 5th edition, a +2 to your AC is a big deal. Because the range is significantly larger in Pathfinder, +2 really doesn't do much. It's not that big a deal. You get the same thing from just leveling up to twice. So yeah, and then at 19, you get Perfected Form. On your first strike of your turn, if you rolled lower than a 10, you can treat the attack roll as a 10. This is a fortune effect. I didn't read far enough to figure out what fortune effect means. I'm assuming that limits how many times it can happen during a turn or something similar to the flourish trait. So, yeah. Perfected Form, 1 attack per turn is minimum a 10. Which I don't know if you're still gonna miss if you get a 10. Again, I don't know what the armor classes are and the things like that. By the time you are 19th level, I think you can pretty safely assume if you used you've gotten 3, 7. Oh, here it goes. 3, 7, 11, 15, 19. At that point, you've gotten 5 ability score in creases. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you max out your ability score at 22. So that would be a +6. Because your unarmed strikes at that point are Master, I think. Let me look. I think it's Master, which is a +6. Yeah, so Master Strikes is 13. You don't get it to Legendary? Really? It's not. So you have a +6, then a +6 that gives you a plus to 12. So your base attack score at that point for that attack is going to be a 22 for your first attack. I don't know what armor classes are, but 22 sounds nice. And then again, floating modifiers and all that jazz. It'll probably be a lot higher or lower. I don't know. It depends on your floating modifiers. Yeah. So overall, when you compare what you get just in the base monk, we're not going to go through feats because this is almost a 2-hour long video, and I need to get this uploaded tonight. But just the base class, the vast majority of things you get in the class are +2s to various things, but that's really all you get is, oh, this turn you get a +2. Oh, this level you get a +2. And that just seems incredibly boring. For a book based on the idea of hyper customizability, which we'll talk about the feats and everything in the next video, this is really, really boring. If we look at the things you get as a monk, you know, 5th level, you get extra attack and stunning strike. Stunning strike is a feat in this. Your monk may never get stunning strike, which is a defining feature of the monk in D&D, and has been since it was introduced in the 2nd edition. Deflect missiles is a feat in it's just something that's built into the monk class. Other things that you just never get. Tongue of the Sun and Moon is another feat in here. You just get it as a monk. To me, the 5th edition monk seems significantly more customizable than this, because you already get the things that make you feel like a monk as part of the base class. Whereas this, the base class is literally just numerical improvements for things you do as a monk. But it doesn't give you any additional abilities. Those are entirely situated in your feats. And your feats, you will get a choice of like 4 or 5, sometimes like up to 8 feats, but you only get to choose 1. So you're extremely limited in what you can do. Whereas with a monk in 5th edition, not only does your subclass, your monastic tradition, give you a bunch of more things that help you customize your monk and make them play very differently, but you have actual feats which will massively change how you play your monk. Something as simple as the mobility feat in 5th edition. Not only does it increase your speed, but anytime you make an attack roll, you don't have to hit, just you make an attack roll against a creature, they can't take opportunity attacks on you. So that one feat changes your playstyle, because now you can run and just attack 4 different people in a turn and not have to worry about any of them being able to hit you. So you literally, with one feat, become a hit and run style attacker. That, from what I read here, and again, I'm using a feat, so it's not a fair comparison. From what I'm reading here, though, you can't do that as a monk here. You do get some interesting things, like you get steps that step is their disengage action, and it effectively, you move 5 feet without provoking an opportunity attack. Monks, there is a feat in there that makes your steps 10 feet instead of 5 feet. So that kind of works, but not really. But because you can only use step, I mean, it takes an action every time you do it, so you have to sacrifice one of your attacks to use this step. So you literally cannot be a hit and run monk. It doesn't work that way. So if I'm going to argue which class is more customizable, or which system is more customizable that lets you play the exact style you want, I'm going to say 5th edition. Because the main class is going to give you all the things that make you feel like a monk. It's not going to make you pick and choose which aspects of the monk you want to be, and which very traditional things that have been a part of the monk class since 2nd edition you get to use in this particular one. It's kind of like the argument that a lot of people have against DLC. Well, they'll go, well, you know, literally what these game companies are doing is they make a whole game and then they chop parts of it off and sell it back to you as DLC. That's kind of what the feats look like. And again, we'll talk about the feats specifically tomorrow. But that's what the feats feel like for me. It is is they chopped off parts of the class and they feed them back to you as feats, trying to tell you it's more customizable. It just doesn't make sense to me. So anyway, this has been an ungodly long video. I'm very, very sorry about that. But this just kind of goes to show you just how complicated Pathfinder is compared to 5th edition. If I did a Pathfinder deep dive, every video would be to 2 hours long, or I would only be able to cover like 2 levels per video. That's how complicated this system is. Anyway, I hope you guys got something out of this. I hope somebody makes it to the end of this. If you did, somewhere in your comment down below, write falafel, and that will let me know you made it this far. Otherwise, that's all for me today. I'll see you guys next time. All right? Bye.